And Dr. Lawrence, you want to?
Yes, currently, because of their own budget cuts, the city of Concord has significantly reduced crossing guards as well as school resource officers. And this evening, they've come to us. We've been talking to them. They would like us to consider allowing volunteer crossing guards. They said that they would do the training. We've had conversations. The issue really is around the indemnification. If for some reason that something occurred where a lawsuit occurred around the crossing guards, who would be indemnifying them? And to this point, the city hasn't shown interest in their willingness to indemnify these volunteers, even though they have other volunteers that they do that with. So it looks like, at this point, if we wanted to approve allowing volunteer crossing guards, it looks like we would be approving it as a district program, which means that then we would be basically, they would be under our umbrella policy as volunteers. And so we just wanted to bring that in front of the board because Ayers is actually, I believe your training is set up for the 15th or possibly.
Do you want to come to the microphone and share anything? That'd be great. And then Mr. Rolen, I don't know if you want to comment on this too. That would be great.
The first training was done this last Wednesday. And so before we implement anything or move forward, we wanted to hear from the board and have board approval for that. And Dr. Lawrence has been working with us on this. And so we had Bill Roach came out and Officer Garcia and did a 1-hour training for some of my parents. And they're offering to come out and do another one. We did give them input on their PowerPoint. And they brought some supplies for us, so that was very nice. And so we do have about 4 parents who are trained, and myself, to kind of help out with that. Tomorrow morning at 7:15, Mr. Hussein from the city of Concord will come out, and he's going to kind of assess our intersection there and give us some more input and give him plenty of input just on how to make our traffic flow a little bit better on that street and make our kids safer. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And just so you know, Ayers wasn't not one of the schools that was reduced recently. Their actually crossing guard was reduced several years back, but they still have a need for a crossing guard. So just so you know, they cut back about 50% of the crossing guards this year. So we still have those other crossing guards that would be then reduced next year.
Right, they're planning to eliminate them next year.
Right, over 2-year and I can understand the city's point of view is that the crossing guards cost them 3 hours minimum, and they're not there for an hour and a half before school and an hour and a half after school, and so there's a lot of time they're paying for that maybe is not necessarily high use time, but so we're trying to see if there's alternative solutions.
Okay, we put this on as an information item because there was some hesitancy around the concept of approving a pilot when we haven't really actually discussed liability or precedent we're setting for absorbing this. So that's why I don't know, Mr. Roll, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to.
I'm happy to be on the spot, and that's absolutely accurate, Madam President. What we are concerned about is some consistency among the board direction concerning volunteer projects. Essentially, the district has no obligation to provide crossing guards, and this is a police function. However, if we do assume some responsibility for this action, the Education Code imposes upon us a duty of reasonable care. So the board is going to be having to make a decision concerning their receptiveness to approving a pilot where volunteers are utilized and could conceivably expose the district to some liability if there's an accident or there's no exercise of reasonable care. That being said, we are very willing to work with the City of Concord and any other municipality to try to alleviate this problem and find a way to equitably share the responsibility for this. But, and I think Dr. Lawrence has had some very positive conversations with the City of Concord. What we are looking for, though, is some sort of uniformity with regard to direction we give our staff and what we want to do from a policy perspective with regard to this problem.
I just want to be here tonight to give any information.
So is this being organized through the school, or is this being organized, is this a parent-faculty club project?
It's It's not a PTA club project because they can't under their bylaws do safety.
It's insurance, they can't do it.
Right.
The reason that the PTA will not cover crossing guards or volunteer crossing guards is that there was a huge lawsuit in the 90s. Both the school district and the PTA ended up paying major claim losses. A student used a crosswalk that was not manned after school, and the courts determined that there should have been a volunteer there at the crosswalk at all times. It was just too much exposure to continue that for covered insurance for PTAs. So my concern would be, if we have a volunteer system, how do we assure that a volunteer is there if all 4 volunteers are home with sick kids? The police department, if the crossing guard is not there, then the police department assumes that responsibility to ensure that an officer is there. When we're working with volunteers, it's a much different situation because they have real life situations that happen that can cause problems. So I would just ask us to carefully consider all the ramifications. I certainly value the parents' desire to assure that their students are safe, but I remain concerned that the school district doesn't have any control over the public streets. We don't write the laws, and we can't ticket the individuals who violate the law. The PTA can raise funds to contribute to the school district to pay for the crossing guards, or they could raise funds to contribute to the city to pay for the crossing guards, or maybe they could raise enough funds to install a traffic light at that intersection. But we should consider all of the exposures.
And I think that's why we put it on as information item, not taking action. Mr. Rolen?
Yes, what I was going to interject is the very acts that they are engaged in, the selection of the crossing guards and the training are those type of acts that under 44808 could expose the district to liability.
Okay, so,
Well,
any other
when I
comments?
get any more information from Mr. Hussein from the city, I'll share that with Dr. Florence. I'm sure he'll share that with you.
Okay, thank you for hanging out here with us. But I'd like to get some next steps on this and some direction here from what staff is comfortable proceeding with, because the board obviously has some concerns about the liability as well and whether we've addressed all the questions. So what is your proposal?
Well, and I think that's the question of the board. We were looking for direction tonight, whether or not we'd bring it back as an action item to approve, having volunteer crossing guards, knowing that it would, increase our potential liability. And so, if the board tonight says that we don't have an interest in supporting this program or in supporting volunteer crossing guards, then we can let the schools know that, and we can let parents and so forth know that. That's really what the direction I was looking for
Okay.
from the board.
Okay, any other board comment here on this?
I feel pretty strongly to, Mr. Roland's point was that we don't have an obligation, but I actually think we do. We may not have a legal obligation, but I think we do have an obligation to make sure our students are safe. My friend Guy Moore and I were out at Mountain View Elementary School back in probably October, and we're amazed at how busy that section was and the parents speeding through. And unfortunately, a week later, there were 2 students there. Do I have the right school? Mount Diablo, sorry. Mount Diablo, 11:30 they start to blend. And so I think we do really have an obligation to make sure we do everything. And I think certainly Ms. Mayo and Mr. Roland points about being very prudent and covering ourselves are well taken. But I think certainly from my perspective, this is worthy of exploration and seeing what we can do to support volunteers.
Well, I think part of the issue is that if you use the Mount Diablo example, that we could be potentially held liable for those children that were hit, even though the parent let them out at an inappropriate place and they were crossing at an inappropriate place. Because the whole issue of if we accept liability and we have volunteer crossing